on the link. Okay. All right. Sorry about the delay, everyone. There we go. Okay. Sorry about the delay, everybody. Thanks for joining the Why Ukraine live stream. Happy that you're all here. Hello. So let's get straight into it. Today, I guess the drone attacks have started. If you haven't seen the news yet, here's Reuters. Definitely go check them out. This is flak over Kiev trying to take out the drones. Apparently 75 Shaheeds over Kiev today. Early in the morning, close to sunrise. So we can expect this for the rest of the winter. Sons of bitches. But, at the same time, ironically, the Russians are complaining. They're complaining that, they lost 76 planes, because of sanctions. Because of our sanctions, Western sanctions. Now, that's not true, of course. Once again, the Russians lie. They stole a bunch of planes. Maybe that's the 76 planes that they're talking about. They literally stole all the planes that belonged to Western that were manufactured by Western countries that were on lease to Aeroflot and the Russian airline industry. Russia just confiscated them, and billions of dollars worth of passengers. It's crazy. It's crazy that we just let them do that. That alone should have been a massive international. That should have been like a declaration of war right there. You know what I mean? Come on. It just shows you why they think the West is weak. Why do they keep trying to take advantage of us? For exactly this reason. So yeah, go read that Newsweek article. Go check it out. So much bullshit. In the meantime, in the this is coming up in the news. Wait. Where are we here? Oh, yeah, this one. Ha! Here, that should go at the end. This one, the EU security guarantees are going to be discussed. So the big question is the EU going to put pressure on Zelensky to make peace with Russia? Once again, I would just like to say Zelensky is not the decision maker as to whether or not there will be peace with Russia. Zelensky could say right now, we're going to declare peace with Russia. Wouldn't make a damn bit of difference because no one in Ukraine would care. Everybody in, America and the EU thinks Zelensky is like George frickin' Washington. And Ukrainians, they're kind of, they have serious doubts. First of all, they question why he wasn't protecting the borders in the first place, why he let this happen. No, we understand that. We all understand. They understand. But, they don't have this. They don't work. One of my Ukrainian students today was I was talking about how I'm going to release a series of videos where I read translated speeches of Zelensky so that people who maybe haven't heard some of his speeches, he was giving like daily speeches in Ukrainian or Russian here in Ukraine since the war started. And they've been a great thing. They've been inspiring the Ukrainian people. And I said I'm going to find the translations, read them, put them into like videos or maybe shorts. Maybe I'll take excerpts, something like that. And my Ukrainian student today was like, why? Come on, he's not George Washington. It's literally what she said, So I think that Ukrainians have a pretty healthy respect or maybe disrespect for their politicians, a healthy suspicion, let's say, coming from long years. So it doesn't matter what Zelensky, if Zelensky makes some deal, which he won't, he's not that stupid, okay? Security guarantees, we'll talk about what security guarantees for Ukraine would and should look like, okay? Today the thing I want to discuss and talk about here is the changes that I've noticed coming to Ukrainian society. And, I've been living here for 4 years and teaching English to businesses, teaching communications, and a big, huge struggle that not just Ukrainians, but Europeans in general have is with the way in which we Americans and also Australians, Canadians, the way we introduce ourselves. This sounds kind of crazy, but here in Europe, like when I first came to Europe 4 years ago, I was traveling around Germany and Netherlands, these places, and very often I would have someone come up to me and say, "Oh, you're an American," introduce themselves to me, want to talk, and I would feel the need to do the thing that we Americans and again Australians, what they call native English speakers, do, which is we ask a question. Oh, where are you from? Is always the first question, right? And then what do you do? Here in Europe, they don't ask those questions in general, okay? Because they don't need to, right? Because the Europeans have despite all the wars and everything, the Europeans have basically been living in the same place for like 5,000 years, since the Bronze Age, and they can tell, as soon as the first word comes out of your mouth, a German can tell what part of Germany you're from or which country in Europe you're from, and here in Ukraine it's the same way. The first word out of your mouth, they already know if you're from the Donbass or if you're from Western Ukraine, if you're from Southern, Middle, what part of Ukraine you're from, and that's they don't need to know anything more than that. People will sometimes work together, half a decade, and know nothing about each other's lives. Have no idea where they're from, how many children they have, nothing. They do not share that information, and in many ways, that comes from a long history of here in Europe, the past, the 20th century, you got the Nazis, you got the Soviets. In the 19th century, you had the secret police were really starting up then in like Austria and Prussia, and then later in these autocracies, in the Tsarist Russia, and so they learned. Oh, thank you, Scotty. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. So they learned not to share information. It's not only impolite. It's they're just like, why? Like, why do you feel the need to tell me where you're from and what you do? As Americans, if I'm riding on the bus with somebody for more than 10 minutes, I want to know who the hell they are. Somebody walks up to starts talking to me at the bar, and pretty soon, 15 minutes later, I know I've seen pictures of his kids. I know, when he joined the army, why he got his second divorce, what his dogs' names are, all of that information. And when I try to explain to my American friends and relatives, for example, that Europeans don't do that. That's not how they introduce themselves to each other. It's like I just told you that Europeans don't breathe air. You know, like, how do you get to know each other? And what can I say? I guess they just kind of trust each other. You know, I mean, Ukrainians are actually very suspicious of each other in many ways, but you must understand, the most important thing to understand here in Ukraine and Europe in general, but Ukraine certainly, is how safe it is here. I mean, it sounds crazy. I'm in the middle of a war, but Ukraine, outside of the war and the missiles falling, you know, outside of this, you know, business, when there's no big explosions, Ukraine is incredibly safe. I can walk around the streets anywhere, and it's not like living in, you know, most of California or Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I lived, where you just walking down the street almost every day, I would get accosted by someone, you know, or have someone kind of threaten me in some way or another. It just doesn't happen here. So people, I mean, maybe it's that, you know, there's a saying, and I don't know if this is true or not, but an armed society is a polite society. So to an extent, I would say, you know, Eastern Europeans especially can come, and like Germans, for example, can come across as being less polite. And definitely they don't want to share any information about their lives or their family. That's like, because in their mind, they still have the scars of the Soviet Union and the KGB, where they would, or the Stasi in Eastern Germany, and the Nazis, where they would keep files on everything, and they would have a network of spies following you around everywhere. And, you know, you want to keep your family safe and protect your family. You would never show pictures of your family to a stranger. That's insane. So this is why I bring this up, because now I have Ukrainian friends and students who are now all over the world. This you know, great diaspora that's happened in the past almost 2 years. And now they're starting to learn that they have to explain to people where they're from. And you can't even just say Ukraine, because people say, "Oh my God, were you on the front lines?" And then they have to explain, "No, I'm from Kyiv." You know, people don't have a sense of the geography of Ukraine. They don't understand how big Ukraine is. So they're having to go through this. So I actually have to teach my students. I even have a chart. Hey, Laura, thanks for coming. Thank you for coming very much. So I have a chart. This is the chart that I show my students. I call it the social CV. By the way, for you Americans, CV is what Europeans call a resume. Okay? And this is a very simplified version of that chart, but I map it out for them, how to go through this ritual that we as native English speakers have when we meet each other. When I first came to Ukraine, my first month, I was trying to get an apartment, a roommate situation, and I met an Australian, and I was going to take over his apartment. Before I could do that, we had to sit down at the coffee shop and basically tell our entire lives to each other, and we just did it. It was natural, you know. I still to this day I remember how old he was when he had his first job. He was 13, and he did a cattle drive from Alice Springs to Sydney, 1,300 miles or some shit like that. I know, you know, why he joined the military, why he got divorced, why he left the military, why he got married again, you know, where he was when he got the call to come to Ukraine. I mean, he was holding a sheep in a Jeep out on the range in Australia somewhere. I mean, just everything about him. And I had to share that level of information with him, too, before he would trust me enough to let me take over his apartment from, because he had roommates and all of this. So that's a thing that Ukrainians are having to learn to negotiate, learn to do as they spread out throughout the world. And it's a real shock for some of them. Real shock. Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about, things that are changing, is I'd like you all to check out this the video from the Kiev Independent. I'm not going to play it, but I'll just let it play in the background here. It's a very interesting discussion about the new Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Umarov, who is very interesting, a Crimean Muslim. He worked on the Properties Bureau that handles government properties, which is a huge source of corruption in Ukraine. So, in other words, government properties get given out to oligarchs and friends of government officials, and it's all very corrupt. He was in charge of rooting out that corruption, and apparently he did a great job. Zelensky, when he booted Reznikov, and if you don't know who that was the former Minister of Defense, very successful in getting a lot of the weapons that are now coming to Ukraine, the Leopard 1s and the Leopard 2s. Yeah. But he maybe just didn't have the courage, didn't have the connections, or just didn't generally have the balls. I mean, he seemed like a good guy, but he didn't have the chutzpah to make the reforms that are necessary to the Ukrainian military. And now it seems like not only, this is what they're talking about in this video, not only has the Minister of Defense been replaced, but all of his deputy sub-ministers as well. And some of them were accused of corruption. There was like a corruption thing about jackets, like soldiers were supposed to get winter jackets and they got light fall jackets instead, and like something about the price of eggs, and that shows like the Ukrainian military was buying eggs for too high of a price. That shows you how serious Ukrainians are about corruption, because let me tell you, the U.S. military, they don't care how expensive the eggs are. Oh yeah, $100 eggs, yeah, but just ship them along with our $10,000 toilets and our $500,000 hammers, like in Iraq. It was just rampant corruption. So it shows you how serious they're taking this. But it's interesting because in this discussion, they're talking about how they're bringing in all of this new blood, younger people. And this is a big generational divide because, how do I say this? I need to make sure I keep track of my notes so I don't wander and go in a roundabout way. One of my supporters sent me a message saying, I can't follow what you're saying. You're so roundabout. You're right. I am. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I would say definitely there's a generational divide here in Ukraine. The people who were raised up in the old Soviet Union have a strong new things equals bad mentality. If it's new, if it's different, it's bad. Everybody has to conform. Everybody has to be the same. You can just imagine it's communist. And, you can, I guess, what is it? You can get the communist out of the country. I don't know. You can get the communism out of the person, but you can't get the something. Anyway, it's stuck in their head. Okay? They were trained like that from a young age. And to a great degree, the education system is still heavily, it's basically communist. But so is the American education system, okay? It's totalitarian, okay? But they still have that sort of zombie totalitarian mentality. Now, the younger generation, if they are, I'm going to say under 40, and certainly if they're under 30, they are less and less likely to be that conformist, at least, I would say, they're more and more likely to be excited about new things, to think about new things, to think of things in new ways, and have the courage. And that's a lot of what we're seeing. A lot of the here, this is Umarov, by the way. So this is the new minister, and it's interesting they talk about. So he worked for the State Property Fund. Interesting they talk about. He seems like he's a good guy, but he's not very well organized. I like these criticisms that they have in this article of him, but he's assembled a great team, and I have a feeling that maybe that he didn't completely assemble this team. I think probably he and Zelensky. I'm not worshiping Zelensky, all right, but I think that maybe he and Zelensky or somebody kind of sat down and planned this out. Probably a long time before. Maybe even with the Americans. Who knows? So. Yeah, new things are bad, and that is changing. So it's really encouraging, and so I'm going to talk about some new things. Another thing that I hear from Ukrainians, even from my wife or her friends sometimes, is they don't understand why Americans or people from other countries want to come here to fight for Ukraine. Like, it doesn't make any sense to them. Why would they do that? Why would people do that? So a lot of Ukrainians assume it's for the money. For the money. Jesus Christ. Like, you think $600 a month is worth dying for? I mean, I understand where it comes from, though, and this goes into this older generation of older thinking, and it's small thinking small, thinking about your own little world, right? Remember, in communist times, and like in Russia today, people are discouraged from thinking outside of their little box, outside of their little family, and all they care about is their family. As long as their family gets, fed and basic necessities, they're doing good. It's a little bit like Republicans in the United States. Yeah, Republicans have strong family values, conservative values. They care about their family. They don't give a crap, really, about things happening outside in the world. They don't even see how that's connected, by and large. All right? It's good to care about your family. It's a good thing. It comes from a good place. But everybody cares about their... Even Hitler had people that he loved, Evil people have families too, and they love their mother. Okay? Loving your family and caring about your family doesn't make you a good person. Younger generations here in Ukraine, and this is true in all of Eastern Europe, if you're under 30 years old, you have, in general, a broader worldview. Not entirely. If you're from the eastern part of Ukraine, I've found that's less the case. I have students from all over Ukraine, so I have students from Donbass and students from like Sumy, places like that. They're very, very close to Russia, and they definitely have much more of a Russian mentality. I had one student this week ask me if I thought that free speech was a power or a weakness, and we had a nice discussion about it. He told me no, he thinks that free speech is a weakness. So that says a lot. He's from the east of, very close, very like 5 miles from Russia. So, you grow up with that. But this is something that I hear very commonly from younger generations here in Ukraine, that historically speaking, since 1991, if an oligarch or whatever politician he was sponsoring wanted to get elected, what they do is they just put a bunch of employees from the oligarch's company on buses and bus them around to the different voting stations and say, vote for this guy. Or if the mayor wants to get elected in a city, he just goes around and, gives a sack of potatoes to every grandma. And then, hey, grandma doesn't care. She doesn't know anything about politics. She doesn't care. All she knows, every babushka, that's the Russian word, babusia. She doesn't care about politics. All she knows is, hey, that's the guy who gave me a sack of potatoes. It's a very low price, for that politician who, in the meantime, is basically taking money out of the grandma's back through taxes, through embezzlement, while handing her a sack of potatoes. But it's basically the same thing that Trump is doing, and many American politicians. It's just he's more obvious than others. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, tell me I'm not. Right. Oh, yeah. So, anyway, young Ukrainians are starting to understand these changes. They're starting to understand why we need this social CV, why we have to explain these things to each other. And they tell me they thought it was because Americans are so open and free with each other. And I'm like, no, it's actually because we don't trust each other and we want to know who we're dealing with. So when I meet somebody, if I'm going to have any sort of a relationship with them, even if it's just a car ride or something, we're going to have a discussion and I'm going to know everything about them. And we have a whole script that we have prepared that might be up to about 45 minutes long. You guys, if you're American, you've probably never even thought about the fact that you do that. I didn't until I came to Europe and tried to introduce myself to people, and I would be like, first, I was born, and give my whole history, and they would go like, I need to go over there right now, So it was a real adjustment for me, and now it's an adjustment for Ukrainians. So let's talk about some of the changes that I feel need to happen as far as the defense of Ukraine goes. I think that I'm talking about us, you guys watching, and us and we in Western countries who support Ukraine. We need to start thinking about a fund. We need to start thinking long term. We need to set up a fund for the volunteer veterans like myself who are going to fight in Ukraine. I have I have a bunch of my friends who are injured. Okay. Already, just in the last 6 months, I have 6 people I know who've died. And what are their families? Some of them are from, different countries. America, Mexico, Colombia, all these countries that are coming to Ukraine to fight. We need to set up either a fund in each country or an international fund some way. If that's going to be through, the American Legion or through the VFW or something, we need to set up a fund to support the disabled veterans, some kind of support, and the families of those the veterans who are disabled or have died. We need to start thinking about that because there's going to be a lot more. There needs to be a lot more. Realistically speaking, in IMHO, my humble opinion, about 30% of the Ukrainian army should be foreign. Okay? Right now, the International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine, I've heard numbers like they have about 2,000 people, a couple of thousand. That's a number that gets tossed around. At one point, I heard numbers like 20,000, but that was like the number of applicants. In the beginning, but it was a completely disorganized mess, so everyone says. We have a lot of testimony to that, and that makes perfect sense. The whole thing was chaos in the beginning. But why? Why do we need a higher percentage of foreigners fighting here in Ukraine? Because there's enough Ukrainians doing it. There's like 700,000 Ukrainians. It's huge. And they need people working in here to sustain the economy. And now they're going around picking people up off the streets. And that's turning Ukrainians against Zelensky. It's going to cause political chaos if this continues. And in the meantime, there's people like me and thousands of us all over the world who are like, pick me, send me, I want to come. But getting through that pipeline of, most of us don't have, military or even medical training. That training should be happening in our home countries, or if not, then I would propose that okay, let's put it this way. There's a lot of funds coming into Ukraine. This is a complaint that Ukrainians are starting to have now. There's a lot of funds coming into Ukraine to rebuild Ukraine from the EU, for example. And people are saying, yeah, great, but Ukraine is being destroyed right now. We need to stop the destruction first. Let's stop the destruction, and then we can rebuild Ukraine, okay? I propose that we combine those two things. One of the big changes that is being made to the military, and let's see if I can find a picture here. Ukraine Medical Battalion. Medical Commander. Dismissed. Yeah, that's the one I'm looking for. So just recently the commander of the medical forces of Ukraine, Tatiana Ostashenko. Yeah? Let's see if we can find a picture of her. So this woman, okay, she looks a little bit frazzled, but I'm sure she was doing as good a job as she could. But, a huge problem has been not enough medical support. There's people losing limbs, dying unnecessarily because there's not enough casualty evacuation, and it's mostly being handled by volunteers and volunteer organizations who are working out there on the front line. And, this goes back to what I was saying before about this older generation here in Ukraine who are stuck in the same thinking, the same thought processes. And this includes, I'm pretty sure, a lot of the top generals who, were trained in the Soviet Union, and a small Soviet army will always lose to a larger Soviet army. So that's what is going on here. They need new thinking, new ways of thinking to solve this problem. And so she's out, right? I'm hoping that whoever replaces her, and I don't know who it's going to be at this point, starts thinking about the fact that a lot of the funds coming in to Ukraine, right, are non-military in nature. A lot of the non-profit organizations or NGOs, non-governmental organizations, as they call them here, they are unwilling or unable to help in any way with the war itself. But what about medical stuff? Right? Why can't we leverage all of these charities? I mean, the Red Cross doesn't do jack. The International Red Cross doesn't do jack shit here. Okay, first of all, there's lots of other charities that are doing it, and if the Ukrainian government would work with them, we could bring a massive core of volunteer workers who are, evacuating and treating first-line medical treatment, just as an example. And then these non-profit organizations who say, we want to support Ukraine, but we can't support the war because we're pacifist and it's against our bylaws or whatever. Okay, sure, but you can help with medical treatment of wounded civilians, soldiers, just like the Red Cross does. It doesn't matter who it is. Could be wounded Russians, whatever. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get to the Russian side, so it's going to be more Ukrainians than Russians, but help everybody, So I think that, if you work at a major company, you probably have the opportunity to donate through your paycheck, for example, to various charities, UNICEF for the United Way, these sorts of things, and it just comes right out of your paycheck, or the company, the corporation itself makes those donations. We need to put pressure, and this is why I am creating the International Legion Auxiliary Corps. So in your home country, America, Canada, Norway, wherever it is, we need to start getting together and putting pressure on, physically calling companies and saying, what are you doing to support Ukraine? We would like you to sponsor, every single company in our respective countries should be sponsoring, I don't care, sponsor a medical battalion, sponsor a combat battalion if they're willing to do that. And that company says, we sponsor this group of people, just like you root for a sports team in America. You root for the Giants, or you root for the Bears. No, we should be rooting for, the 3rd Battalion. We can, some of them even have cool names we can give them. Let me hang on. There's a comment here. Yeah. My hope is that Sweden will host and finance volunteer fighters, etc., like in the Winter War in Finland. Wow, I did not know about that. Remember, Sweden is not yet NATO, so it's kind of... that's a good freaking idea, man. Yeah. Well, in America, we have a tradition of, and I've talked about this before, we have the tradition of the pancake breakfast, or the spaghetti dinner. That give people food, it always gets Americans together. And, have people, holidays is a great time to do it. Have people over for a holiday party, and then you sit around and you just bring up the topic of conversation. It doesn't even have to be a party for that purpose, but if it is, it's better. It could be complete strangers meeting up. It could be, your own circle of friends. Whatever. You got to start somewhere. And you just start talking about what you can do, and pretty soon, maybe one person wants to do something and they have an idea, but they have no time. One person has time, but they don't have ideas and they have no money. One person has money, but they have no time. Oh, you get those 3 people together and now you've got something, Every one of us can do something like that. Yeah, okay. Going on through my notes. Talked about that. Right. So, this goes back to the question here about security guarantees. Security guarantees, a good security guarantee would be a whole bunch of foreigners, us, Americans, and people from Sweden, and people from, Argentina, or whatever. It doesn't have to be NATO. It can be a coalition of volunteers, an international foreign legion of volunteers who come to Ukraine and say, we are going to defend Ukraine on a much larger scale. None of this 2,000 fighters here. No. And if it does get that big, and this is where Ukrainian resistance, this is where this is where it's good that the command is changing at the top, because there's a lot of resistance in the Ukrainian army to letting foreigners have any sort of command roles. I'm sure you can think of various reasons for that, but let's get some ex-NATO veterans commanding their own companies, their own brigades, their own battalions. A whole division of, an actual legion of people where it's not... see, a huge problem, I've heard this time and again, from not just from foreign fighters, but from NATO-trained Ukrainian fighters as well. They'll say, our commanders just send us in with no intel, no planning. They just say, go kill Russians there. And this is how Ukrainians die. This is how my friends die. that command, and I don't mean the top level. I mean, maybe Zaluzhny is an okay guy. Maybe his deputies were okay people. But there's a middle and I'm saying this as I'm getting ready to go into the Legion. So probably if this goes viral, some commander is going to come up to me one day and be like, "Aren't you that guy?" But there's this middle level of career military, or maybe not so much career military as corrupt officers in the Ukrainian army that, again, they were Soviet trained, or maybe, back in 2014, I think I read somewhere that there was the Ukrainian military had about 7,000 people total, something along those lines. So they didn't really take it seriously, and now they're put into these leadership roles, and some of them are learning. Some of them are probably great. I will tell you that the officers that I met and worked with when I was in training seemed pretty good guys to me, actually. And they really, really cared, and they were trying to make the Legion as good as great as they could. But I hear tons and tons of stories over and over again of how that's not all of them, So it's about, rooting out those guys, and or getting them training, And I know that especially since the counteroffensive, let's not say failed, but didn't happen the way that it was planned. I mean, obviously there's lots of reasons for that, but a lot of blame was put on the leadership and the officer corps of the Ukrainian army. And I hope that this is part of the changes that are coming, positive changes. But in my mind, let's let the foreigners, the Foreign Legion, provide the defense of Ukraine. And once the Russian military has, which seems to be the strategy here, is to let the Russian army bleed itself dry. How many millions of Russians are going to die on Ukrainian soil, tragically, over the next however many years? Once the Russian society is completely just depleted itself, bashing its head against the rocks of Ukraine, pushing up sunflowers, then if NATO won't do it, Russia's going to fall apart. Or the Russian Federation is going to fall apart. That's what's going to happen when they lose. I talked about that last night, and we need to start preparing for that. So then Ukraine can invade whatever parts of Russia it needs to invade to possibly secure the nuclear weapons, prevent anything crazy from going on. Because if NATO's not going to do it, and they can't use Western weapons to do it, then they're going to have to use whatever this old Soviet leftovers they have. Ukraine is going to have to invade Russia, and I don't mean Crimea. I mean Krasnodar, I mean Belgorod, I mean Kursk, and maybe even Moscow. It's going to have to happen. If it doesn't happen, this war is actually going to get worse. Then it really will turn into World War III. Rant over. You guys, feel free to I hope you were enjoying my little rant there, but feel free to interrupt me at any time or disagree with me in the comments there. I want to talk about why joining this channel, not joining this channel, but joining the auxiliary corps, which is what happens when you join this channel, why it's important. There are some things that we need to talk about, that we need to plan for in our respective countries, that is not being talked about, that needs to be planned for, that I can't talk about here on YouTube. Because you might support Ukraine, but you're not the only one watching. I know that a certain percentage of my audience is in Russia or is Russian supporting. I look at the statistics on YouTube, and I know. And I haven't had a lot of trolls in the past 6 months. Actually, since Prigozhin because he owned most of the troll farms. It's pretty interesting. They kind of quieted down once he died. Pretty interesting. But we need to talk about some things that need to happen, that we need to make happen or push to make happen, that can't be talked about just publicly on YouTube. And so that's why I've set up the Discord. That's why I'm inviting people in. Russian trolls are not going to pay a membership. All right? Yeah. Of course they do. They really need financial help and equipment and ammunition. These are basic things, but I want to get into specific stuff. Very specific stuff. There are specific things that we can do that are not yet being done. And I can't talk about them just on YouTube. And I can't talk about them in the Facebook group that I have set up. It's just not secure enough. So I hope you enjoyed my ranty little live stream today. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Fire Marble, Scotty D, Oksana. I want to show you something that I'm working on, or I'm having worked on. It's an experiment, yeah? So 90% of the deaths here in Ukraine are not from bullets. This is a statistic. You can look it up. This is what I've read. Not from bullets. They're from shrapnel. And I know personally a lot of friends who have taken shrapnel. Some have died. I don't know any friend of mine who's been shot. Honestly. Shrapnel. The thing is, just as was discovered in World War I, most of the shrapnel is tiny little pieces of metal that can be stopped by several layers of tough fabric. Okay? It's not that hard to do. My hobby, which is full contact medieval sword combat, just happens to be one where we wear armor that is composed of lots of layers of fabric that does a really good job of stopping all sorts of weapons. Obviously, Kevlar is great if you can get it, but guess what? It's much more expensive. So I am experimenting with the next strongest natural material, and that's this. This is jute. It's a potato sack, or it's a potato sack material. Yeah, jute fiber is one of the strongest natural fibers. It's has a super high tensile strength. I am literally having armor made for myself out of this. Now I'm building it in such a way that I can also, if need be, or I'm having it built in such a way that I can also, if need be, insert like ceramic plates or whatever. But 90% of the time, I'm actually doing is I'm having boot covers made. So what we would call in the medieval reenactment groups, we would call them greaves. So just to show you what greaves look like. Yeah, basically like that. Out of this. Because I have two friends right now with injured legs. And something like this that covers my boots from knee down to ankle, even part of the foot. I don't want it to be too heavy because it's going to slow me down, and it's probably not something I'm going to wear all the time. If I'm going to be running, I might not wear this. But if I'm going to be just sitting in a trench, which a lot of, I understand, a lot of us who are, maybe not so experienced, we're not going to be picked for the first assault brigade or something. We're going to sit in a trench and sit there and wait and listen to the bombs come and just soak up artillery. Well, I want to protect my ass. And literally my ass. I'm going to put this on my ass too. And I don't care if I look like an idiot. I'll spray paint it green or whatever. That's fine. About the same number of layers of jute impregnated with polymer. I will once I have it made. Someone just asked, do you have the opportunity to safety test how the fabric stops fragments? Well, I am going to. I'm going to make a bunch of test pieces. I'm going to make a bunch of stuff for myself. I'm going to make them and take them out when I go to the Legion. I'm going to take some of these with me, and maybe I'll get to try them with some like grenades or something. But I've done a lot of research on this, so I've been studying up on this for the past, since the war started, for past year and a half at least. I've got all these studies about jute versus Kevlar and all sorts of composites, and I've been watching all these YouTube channels where people are building different types of homemade armors. So if you want to see that, there's lots of channels for that. If you want to just look up homemade body armor, and they test all kinds of different things, milk jugs and old jeans, all kinds of things. So this is one of the best things that I found. It's not going to stop bullets. I don't give a shit about bullets. I'm talking about all the little pieces of shrapnel that are about this big. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ionic Decay. Yeah, arm, legs, neck. Yeah, they're totally open. And the problem is that if any of you were Iraq veterans, that's when the U.S. Army started coming out, because the IEDs started coming out with like full body armor, covering everything with ceramic plates and steel. And guess what? The number one non-combat injury of veterans in Iraq, American veterans in Iraq, number one non-combat injury, back injuries. For carrying all the goddamn weight that soldiers have to carry. And I know that I'm going to be hoofing, 120 pounds of ammo and NLAW or whatever else they have me carry multiple kilometers out to some OP observation post or whatever. So, the lighter the better. And that's the thing about a lot of these natural fibers is that they are super light. Yeah, so that's something I'm working on. Tomorrow, I'm going to start unpacking all of the gear that I have packed up here, and I'm going to repack it. So maybe I'll be able to show you guys some of the... I think I mentioned that on this page. So this is my... it's the International Legion Auxiliary Corps online support store where you can buy gear for legionnaires. So that's the foreign volunteers coming to fight in Ukraine. And you buy this, you can pay as little as $1. It's a contribution towards these items. You can even buy a gift card for your friends. And once enough money is collected for, let's say, a set of plates, we've got enough money right now for one single tourniquet. So hopefully, as soon as that money gets processed through my Shopify, I might even do it online, like physically click on the purchase and send it. And I'm thinking, tell me if you think this is a good idea or not. Since this will be the very first purchase and the very first tourniquet certainly that I will have ordered, I'm going to have it sent to me here first so that I can show everybody the tourniquet the tourniquets that we're going to send to the Legion, and then I will physically put it into Nova Postia and send it to my commander in the Legion. Even if it's just one, hey, it's one. It's just a couple extra days in shipping. I pick it up and then send it out the next day, but I think it'll be good for you guys to see it. So I'm also going to I was going to do it today. I was really trying to get things done today. I wanted to do video editing today. I was going to work on the website today, and everything got just screwed up. So, but I'm going to add here a place for secondhand military gear. Okay, because I think I mentioned before in the place where I'm staying, not here, but in Zakarpattia, which is in the west of Ukraine, very close to the Hungarian border, is a bunch of secondhand shops selling all kinds of NATO gear, and you never know what you're going to get, but there's a lot of like rain gear, for example, which my commander told me that we desperately need. Winter coats, all sorts of things like that from all sorts of NATO countries. So tomorrow I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I have picked up. I'm going to just kind of hold it up for you and showcase it and be like, hey, this is how much it cost me. I mean, very like for $1, $300 military pants that I bought for like 22 grivnas, which is it's like 75 cents, and we can I can put that on here. It'll be kind of like a grab bag situation. So when I go to the secondhand shop with your money, I'm not going to know what they're going to have. I'm just going to buy it all and send it to the commander, to the Legion. But with the emphasis on rain gear and winter coats. The same thing is like for winter wool socks, which are always in desperate need, especially in the winter, but just in general. We go through about one pair a week, both in training and on the front line. So yeah, so tomorrow I'm gonna do that. Also, I want to apologize to Dr. Gerdes. I know he occasionally watches these streams, and Dr. Gerdes, if you are watching, I saw your email. I didn't see it before because it came to my email that I set up to manage this Shopify, and since I hadn't been getting any purchases except for the tourniquet purchase, and mostly it was just spam from Shopify. So I saw your email. I was planning on contacting you today, and tomorrow definitely. If you'd like to collaborate, whatever, I definitely will be having time. Also, I might be doing a live streams. I'm in talks possibly doing live streams with Jonathan M.F. Pierce from ATP Geopolitics. He put out an invite today looking for people. I love doing these live streams, but I would really like to do it in a more conversational format, so I'm not just talking by myself here. I listen to ATP Geopolitics, that channel, which I'll just bring it up on my screen, do a little shout out. Here's my YouTube channel, in case you didn't know. There it is. Let's see. ATP Geopolitics, yeah. So I listen to this guy every single day. He has like multiple, yeah. And also Dr. Gerdes. Let's see. Dr. Gerdes explains. Dr. Gerdes is a devout Republican. I like listening to him because I like getting the other perspective, because of course I'm not a Republican. I really like this video that he put out today where he goes in and not this advertisement. Okay, yeah, this one. He is able to go in and analyze this Russian, and I think he started, I hope he didn't do it because I made the suggestion, but I did. He was looking for, stuff he could do on his channel about Ukraine, and I suggested that he look at Russian media and also American pro-Russian media like RT, and he goes in and analyzes that stuff, and I can't do that without throwing up. And I like ATP Geopolitics because I usually listen to it because I don't need to see the maps. I know the maps like the back of my hand. I know where Krinky and Avdiivka and or Orivka and Huliapola and all those places are. So I listen to ATP Geopolitics and just it's kind of always playing in the background in my ear because it's just facts, So I would really love to, occasionally pop in on the weekends, maybe do a live stream with him would be super cool. He does live streams regularly with Andrew Perpetua. I like Andrew Perpetua, but I can't listen to him. I tried listening to him today, and he's too much like me, I think, except more, he's kind of, has lots and lots of really good information, more than I do, for sure. But he talks really slow, and he's depressing. I don't need it. I'm depressed enough. Yeah. So, anyway, that's it, guys. I want to thank everybody for coming. Again, I know I did this already, but Oksana, Scotty, Laura, Fire Marble, and Ionic Decay, thank you for your comments. Everyone else who's listening, whose names I can't see, I'd like to just invite you. Yeah. I'd like to just invite you to join my channel, and if you do that, I especially want you to get on the Discord so we can start talking to each other. If you don't feel like joining, wow, wait, did somebody just send money? Okay, well, okay, I'll look later. But thank you. But if you don't want to join the Discord channel, I know a lot of people don't like Discord. We do have a Facebook, and I'm going to be inviting a bunch more members. I'm not logged in on this profile to Facebook, but yeah, this is the Why Ukraine channel. This is where I post all the videos that I do. I'm also going to, I'm going to be setting up on other social media. It just takes time. I'm going to try to get it all done before I go and join the Legion, so that this system is in place, so that when I am making posts from a trench or whatever, it automatically goes out to all the social media that I want to. I would love it if any of you wanted to help with that. That would be massively awesome. So I've stayed up late enough, and I haven't even worked out yet today. So, God, I drank so much caffeine yesterday. I was last time I looked at the clock, it was 2:34 in the morning. And so I was like, that's half the reason why I didn't get anything done today. I was up until 2:30 in the morning exercising because I couldn't sleep. And I tried everything, and I ran out of melatonin. So I just worked out rah, 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 right in the other room there where there's no curtains looking out on the street. I'm sure whoever in the houses nearby probably think, oh, it's the crazy American. But anyway, so yeah, I guess I'm gonna go work out before I go to sleep. And thank you all for coming. Thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting Ukraine. Slava Ukraine. До побачення.